Hi, this is Sarah Needham, and I help tech founders and leaders unleash their impact in creating a more sustainable life on Earth, whilst looking after themselves, so creating a more sustainable business. And today we're talking sharing bravely into 2021, having some of those discussions with people who are out to make a difference in the world, and hear what their thoughts are on how that works, what's easy, what maybe is a bit more challenging. And today I've got Nicole with me. Now, I met Nicole through the Institute of Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam, where I live. And we found we had a bit more of a connection than just what we started with. So, hi, Nicole, nice to see you.
Hello, Sarah. Thanks for having me here.
So, why don't you tell the listeners just a little bit about you, where you're from, and actually where you are now?
Yeah, so I like to say that I'm a Brazilian with a French touch and Thai influences. So it's a bit of a mix. Very nice. So yes, born in Brazil, but left Brazil when I was in the early 20s, and then lived in many places in France, and now based in Germany. In Berlin, I was in Potsdam when we met, and now I'm based in Berlin. So continue my experience, a resilient nomad. I like to. That's another expression I really like.
Cool. So, how would you describe yourself so the listeners get to know a little bit about you?
Yeah, I told you it's the most difficult question, right? We do so much and how to describe ourselves. So I definitely, and I like the title of this conversation here, because sharing bravely. I think I'm a very brave person, and doing so. I like to do things that my rule is that I like to do things that I'm scared of. So that's the main thing that kind of guides me when I want to do things. That if I'm scared, that's the right thing to do. So you can push yourself a bit. And the funny example is that right now I work a lot of sustainability, of course, and what we call, I think we're going to discuss that, but planetary health. So I'm very much interested in everything that we do, in how this crazy transformation of our environment that we humans are imposing to the environment, what is affecting our health. So before, I remember talking about this being a brave thing, because of this traveling and work, I was constantly living on a plane. And when I used to tell people, said, I'm afraid of flying, and nobody believed me. So that's now good for the environment, that we have this moment of pause and thinking. So yes, I think sharing bravely is a very good title for this conversation.
Cool. So, what is it that kind of has inspired you? Tell us a bit about the Women Leaders Planetary Health, and what's inspired you in building this into something that you wanted to create for the world.
Yeah, so I moved to Germany. I got an award, that is, I was the first Klaus Stopper Sustainability Fellow, and Klaus Stopper is a former Minister of Environment in Germany. He's also a former executive secretary of the UN Environment Agency, the UN Development Program. So they had this fellowship, and was for individuals who, like Klaus Stopper, wants to bring science, but to use science to transform the world, right? And when I got this award, I said, well, I don't want to do another policy brief or another publication or write something that nobody will read about. So you have to be how can we translate really what we're learning about planetary health, sustainability, and all that to the real world? And I said, well, how can we be even more impactful with this knowledge? And I said, the issues of gender, and they're so connected to sustainability, but nobody talks this way, right? People talk about either sustainability or gender or health. So what I wanted to do is to bring three fields they don't communicate very well, and try to create an impact. So I founded this Women Leaders for Planetary Health. It was really this, I think, is a niche that tried to break the silos of action for sustainability. And we launched this mentorship program to start with. So as you know, at the beginning, we were never clear what exactly we were going to do with this, but I saw the need to act in this three fields at the same time. So that was the main motivation. And now we are understanding that with so much interest and people trying to support us, I think we found a very important niche. And the pandemic came, so we found this before the pandemic. And with the pandemic, it was so clear the absolute need to talk about these issues from the gender perspective as well.
I love what you're saying here. You're basically saying there wasn't something in this area which actually brought these three things which are important to me together. So, I've created it, I've tested it, I've tried it. So what's your thinking around that? Taking something where there isn't something and just doing an experiment.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a definition of being a founder of something, right? It's usually it's very hard when we are trying to, if you sit at the table said, I want to found something. It's hard because a lot of things are out there, and it's so when you see a problem, it's almost by accident. At least it was with me when I entered this field. My background is in international relations, so I work with multilateral decisions and negotiations at the UN. But then I started working with doctors, right? And going to the public health field, which I have no experience. And I was never a gender advocate. So it was really by circulating in different spheres and different groups that I think we can see what is missing, because we bring different perspectives. So when I see these doctors talking about, their ideas of what sustainability is or what they should do, I was really seeing how the policy dimension was missing. And the reason that I think I could make myself and find a place in the planetary health community is that nobody is really thinking about how they translate this knowledge to policymakers, decision makers, to business. And because I've been circulating so many continents and countries and different cultures, it's easier to see what is missing. So I think that was a bit of luck. And when you put yourself in this position out of your comfort zone, you're more likely to find what is missing.
I love that. Thank you. So you always seem to have a lot of energy, but how is it that you continue to be able to do all these different things that you're all kind of pulling together? You always seem to have sort of 10 projects on the go at the same time. So what is it that sort of nurtures you as you create things for the future?
Oh, it's definitely the infinite learning. I was reading the other day, if you keep learning, you'll never get old, right? So I think we don't like to get old, and when you're using your brain and you like we mentioned also, we're never bored. So I'm really enjoying learning, now about all these new infectious diseases, and now we have COVID, of course, so we have to learn the medical parts. But this continually mixing things is what really gives me energy, and I just love it to take the challenge of entering a new community. You don't know anything, then you have to learn the language. I think that's a very important thing, right? People love to talk in jargons, and they have their own secret language according to their communities, but once you enter that and you start speaking like them, so and that's a very exciting thing. It's like learning, even when you're learning German or Portuguese or French, but you also have to learn the language of the communities. So I think that's a very exciting thing for me.
What I love about that is you're talking about learning a language which is actually associated with the community you're trying to build, as what, not just on a cultural level, but actually even going deeper than that. Is actually learning the language so that you can understand what this community is talking about and challenge it where it's at.
Exactly. I think and of course, at the beginning, it's not a comfortable position, because they look at you and say, who are you here? You're nobody, right? That's not if you don't have this courage, and if you don't have this, a bit of confidence as well, right? People they don't give you enough attention at the beginning because they don't know you, they don't trust you. But once you start, showing up and learning the language and showing the other side of things that they are not seeing, the doors start opening, and that's an exciting thing.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you've got a courage. You're not scared to go where you feel potentially uncomfortable. But what is it where you're maybe too hard on yourself, or that thing where you actually struggle to laugh at yourself?
Well, I think that's every hour. We are very hard on ourselves, and I think it's hard for people sometimes to work with you in terms of, because with the same level of, if we're demanding with ourselves, of course you expect the highest level of commitment, or whatever it is that you want for yourself. You want others to do the same, and of course people see things differently. So that's the little bit of struggle. And then definitely I would like to have more of this patience to understand that people might have different speed. I think that's probably a good one. And you have to understand it. And sometimes you do, but at the subconscious level, you can get more impatient. And so I don't laugh too much at myself when, when I don't understand that. Or, people say it's easy to say you need empathy, of course, and you try that. But when you want things to happen, you want to do it fast, and you have to also take the time to digest and celebrate the good things that you're doing as well. I think we forget, because if you're pushing yourself all the time, you don't take the moment to celebrate what you already achieved. So
yeah, cool. So sometimes it's about slowing down to be able to celebrate. And
yeah,
also what I'm hearing from you is a bit actually around what it is with what you're trying to create with Women Leaders for Planetary Health is understanding this diversity and inclusion actually at a personal level, and how it impacts what you're creating, and what it is that you want to achieve. So that's really interesting to hear that kind of reflection. It's almost like this balance that you're moving towards.
yeah.
Cool. So what is potentially one piece of advice you wish you'd have known 12 months ago before you started on this particular journey?
12 months ago, well, I don't know if it's 12 months ago or if it's really before, because 12 months ago I felt honestly a bit prepared for all this craziness. It's hard to say, but I think I was, when you leave a readiness, I had a lot of home office in my life, working every time I was traveling as, an international consultant. You would work in very difficult conditions in different places. So being at home and all this that happened with the pandemic and with the things I was studying and working on, it was a few months before the pandemic. I was at the World Health Summit in Berlin, and we have the head of WTO, the World Health Organization, talking. The issue of a pandemic is not if, but when. So I was hearing that all the time, and I was kind of finding, oh, when is this going to happen? And then it did so quick that it was kind of validating that everything that we was doing was so important. So 12 months ago, I was kind of in a comfortable position, if I'm allowed to say that. But what I wish that maybe before, decades ago, is to understand all the systemic barriers that we discussed. That now it's everywhere on TV. That seems so obvious and everybody's aware. That why we didn't talk about this 20 years ago, when you're maybe teenagers, or when you're starting your studies or your masters, and you see boys getting they're easily going and they want to become the speakers for the classroom or whatever, and it's just this difference, that how the position that women take, and they're more comfortable not taking these risks. So I wish that we had these conversations about systemic barriers to equality earlier.
Thank you. What is one wish for yourself for 2021?
Well, I think it's definitely this patience, right, that we were discussing, and just taking the time to. And the other day, I think I was reading something. If you have a plant or something, you don't put water and then you just go there, see if it's growing. So you have to kind of do it every day. Just be consistent and be comfortable with this waiting, right? We have to make our plants, give this nutrition, and then get the results. So that's what I definitely want to have. The resilience, I think I do have, and but that's very useful. This adaptability, but the patience, definitely, I wish for myself, but especially the lockdown, and Germany changed the dates for the stopping the lockdown every 2 weeks. That's something that is we need a lot of patience for this moment that we're living on.
Okay, and I'm hearing a bit of actually being in the process and actually allowing this to unfold at a rate that's maybe slower than you're used to, but actually recognizing the value that you can create through letting it unfold. Yeah.
Exactly. Everything that is really good takes time, right? So we have to just keep this mantra and have the confidence that you're doing the right thing. But I think that's something that if you're doing your best, if you're putting the time that you have, doesn't need to be, it's the time that you have, and And with that, obviously, great things will happen if you're consistent, right? Because I think what a lot of people do, everybody is very enthusiastic about a new idea, but what is hard is to keep that commitment throughout time. And I see a lot, even if you would get volunteers, right, in a project, they all want to volunteer, and then after a month they would disappear. But I think I'm lucky enough to work with people who have this stamina, and they are giving. It's actually impressive to see the amount of time that they dedicate on top of everything that they already do. So this gave me a lot of energy this year as well. It's knowing that you're not alone in this fight for change. So, and when you surround yourself by a community that wishes to create change, in this case for planetary health, it's exciting. So today we just announced that we officially joined the Planetary Health Alliance. That we have more than 230 organizations. It's based at Harvard, but it's really a global network. And I've been working with them since when it was established in 2016. And it's an absolute pleasure to have my organization that we founded just in 2019. And we are early 2021 and having already all this official process moving forward and having the support of the community. So that's very exciting.
Love that. That's cool. So I'm hearing about from you is actually finding your community of people who have got a similar kind of ambitions as yourself and want to make change, but also that continuation, that commitment and focus to actually keep showing up even when things get tough, to know for yourself what your purpose is and why you're there.
Yeah, the focus, I think, is definitely the ingredient that is very important, because the change we are trying to bring, it's not going to be tomorrow, right? So that's, I think, the bit of the frustration. It's not that, oh, in 5 years, climate change doesn't exist. So you have to make yourself find the small victories that you can actually make it visible. So that's why the mentorship for me is very interesting, because it's tomorrow. Seeing a young leader that they work with us and then they get the next fellowship is very concrete, it's very tangible. And they create their own organizations. And that's what makes me happy at the moment, because I know I cannot solve climate change by myself. I cannot stop deforestation in Brazil. I cannot save all the indigenous populations. But if you see more people working for that and the changing mindset of the majority, right? You don't want to be part of this minority group, but if you want to make this, it's about mainstreaming planetary health in everything that we do. And that's exciting. And this week now we have pharmaceutical companies talking about planetary health. Can you believe it? This is happening. And I really want to see what they have to say about that. I'm still not, I don't know if I'm supportive. I really want to see, because we know how business could change things a little bit. But it's interesting that they are calling for a more holistic approach instead of saying, oh, we are now doing climate only, for example. And that's something I'm excited, is calling for change in a holistic way. And it's not only
I love your excitement. I love to see it, because you light up and you can see it in your.
Very exciting, it is.
So moving on to, in that case, with everything you've just said, what's your one wish for the planet for 2021?
Well, for the planet, like I said, I want more people doing planetary health, and this is happening. So I'm kind of getting happier, and I want these communities to talk to each other. And I think that's the value of transformation, because we're never going to change anything if you keep thinking with the same lenses, with the same community, with the same topics, right? Business, they want to grow, and I don't know, public health, they care about who is not dying, or it's not about that, right? We need this prevention of this catastrophe that we usually see in terms of environmental change or public health. It's before, right? It's about education. It's this early attempts of change. So
it's about less siloed thinking, getting people to recognize co-creation and the impact that can have, and the ripple effects that can go through.
And the value of knowledge that is not only the formal knowledge, right? It's not only the academic knowledge. That's something that it's not easy, because obviously when you're talking to donors, they want to very clear criteria and measurable efforts, and therefore academia, they have the way to show, oh, we are publishing here, we're doing this in this journal because we have this impact factor. But there is growing recognition that traditional knowledge, or how to involve local communities in the problem framing, because you cannot go as a researcher to the field and say, oh, your problem is flooding, and that's what we're going to do. And sometimes it's not even what this community cares about or what they perceive as a problem. So if you don't have the community buy-in, you're not going to change anything, because the fundings, they never last more than what, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years too. So how to do this long-term transformation, it's only if you have people on the ground who are also thinking that way. So this co-creation is very important.
And what's the one change that you're making in 2021 to live more sustainably?
Yeah, this again, this is a conversation that we can always talk about, that, you know, I eat less meat, I consume less, and I take, you know, shorter showers, and that's okay. And I think we all are now aware of the importance of reducing, you know, pollution and unnecessary consumption of goods that don't bring us any good. But I really want to maybe like bring these conversations that hurt more often. I think that's, if you really want to talk about sustainability, it's, you cannot just bring the blame and try to blame the individual and then say, oh, if you're not doing your part. I think these conversations are, they limit us a little bit, because they hide this bigger agenda. That's what we're talking about. We need like real transformation. It's the way we do business. If we keep, oh, we recycle this so we can consume more, right? So it's never addressing the root cause of these problems. So for me, if you want to be sustainable, we're going to have these conversations at all levels. And we see already happening, because the pandemic really brought some of these challenges and to our faces. And there is no option now to ignore. You know, we talk about racism, we're talking about, of course, women during the lockdown, the violence that we saw against women. That's something, you know, everywhere, not only in poor countries, let's say. So when these things were clear for everybody, it's easier also to demonstrate the importance of acting on this.
So what I'm hearing from you is actually your commitment for this year is not to step over any difficult discussions, to use the strength that you have in stepping into these discussions to actually create more impact with everything that you're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. What is perhaps one motivational saying, or maybe a book or a podcast or something that you can recommend to the listeners that's been that thing that you would, you know, can have a broader impact?
Yeah, so because of, we were all got very excited, I think, with the change in American politics and the change that will bring in speech. And I think words matter, and having even this less, I'm not convinced that the problem is not over, right? There's still a lot of division in not only the US, but also in my own country, Brazil. So I'm just excited we're still early February. So for the moment, there is a little bit of optimism. And I really enjoyed Kamala Harris' book, The Truth, I think it's The Truths We Hold. And it was very interesting. It's always inspiring to see the journey of women who reach the highest level of politics. And she talks, two things that I really enjoyed was when she not only describes her personal journey, but when she talks about climate change, she also reminds us that it's a public health crisis. It's about a security issue. It's not only an environmental aspect. And then she was questioning, I think it was a candidate to the CIA, and she was the last one to question him. And then she posed a question about climate change in this sphere of security, and everybody was like, why is she doing that? So it was a very interesting, that to me is a bit obvious, but you know, at this point, she still felt the need to talk about this in 2021, or I mean, the book is earlier. But, and another point that was very inspiring, because what we are doing at the Women Leaders for Planetary Health, is the importance of mentors. So she had important mentors, and she showed her commitment to, you know, throughout her life, she will always be a mentor to others, to other women. And that gave us, also opened my eyes when you see many of these women leaders talking about mentorship, that perhaps before I wouldn't pay attention if I wasn't trying to create one myself. I wish I had even more mentors throughout my life, but there was some hard learnings through things that you had to do yourself. And once you have a mentor, it's so much easier. So that was inspiring. I would recommend that book.
Cool. Thank you, Nicole. That's great. And is there any kind of last words that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I'd just like to invite people to go to our website, social media, and try to follow us. And maybe they are doing similar things or interested in supporting, because that's one thing that everybody cares about, gender, planetary health. But business, they need to be more concrete. They need to engage with organizations that are concretely trying to do something. So that's an invitation. We also have in April, the upcoming global summit of the Planetary Health Alliance that is hosted by Brazil, but it will be a virtual summit. And this will definitely bring a lot of interesting minds together. So they could also visit the website of the Planetary Health Alliance to get more information about this meeting. It will be the Planetary Health Week, last week of April. So there will be a lot of things happening during this week. And I think it would be an interesting time to connect with people interested in this topic.
So we'll put all those links into the profile so everybody can go through, and if they're interested, obviously click through, and I'll put Nicole's details in there, so if you want to get in touch, then I'm sure she'll be happy. Perfect. Right, thanks ever so much, Nicole. It's great to see you again, and I hope we see each other again soon in person.
Thank you, Sarah. It was great.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.